I'm Lauren Kugler with the Community Foundation of the Gunnison Valley. We're thrilled that you're here this evening to join us for a session of knowledge sharing, visionary thinking, and the presentation of ideas that can help move us into a brighter and healthier future. Thanks to our 4 presenters this evening, as well as to Western Colorado University Communication Arts Department and Chad Rich for videography, and to the Center for the Arts for making this evening possible. I would also like to thank the Community Foundation staff. It took a team to make this vision into reality. Thank you to Mario Ewell, Alicia Corliss, Scott Krieger, and Laurel Runcie. We hosted our first ever TICtalks at the Gunnison Arts Center just last Tuesday, and it was a big hit. I'm excited for this evening to build on that momentum. The TIC in TICtalks stands for Thrive, Inspire, Connect, right out of the Community Foundation's vision statement, to inspire and connect people so everyone can thrive. What you'll hear tonight are big ideas from some people who inspire us. And we believe in the value of convening around important ideas and tackling big issues together as a community. Our presenters this evening work across various sectors and have a wide range of expertise. We tasked each of them with presenting an idea that they believe to be vital as our community looks to the future. One of the many lessons we learned from the State of the Community report earlier this year is that we can't expect to just fit old puzzle pieces together in new ways, but rather we need new ways of thinking about things. All of these presenters offer new and distinct perspectives that may help serve as a foundation on which to build. Each presenter will take the stage individually. There will be plenty of time for questions and ongoing discussion, but we ask that you hold those until the end of the program. The bar will be open again when the presenters are finished, and they will stick around for a short happy hour to continue discussions with anyone who is interested. And we'll all be in the downstairs lobby. There are 4 different tables. Well, they will be located to have discussions with you after. All the knowledge presented to you this evening is free of charge and unencumbered by online comment sections and anonymous trolls. We're grateful that you all joined us this evening and challenge you to leave with something that can help you and our community thrive, inspire, and connect. Chris Cappy is the president of Pilot Consulting and chief learning and networking officer for Impactful Advisors. He's the author of Driving Leaders, Lessons in High-Performance Leadership Drawn from Automotive, Road, and Endurance Racing. Chris has 40 years of professional experience with global businesses such as General Electric, IBM, Cisco, BP, and World Bank, and their teams and leaders. He's an advisor, coach, and educator and known expert in the field of change management. Chris has worked in over 40 countries with over 50 major companies across many industry segments, both for and not-for-profit. He and his teams have influenced and developed leaders worldwide, numbering in the tens of thousands. He has a business track record of several $1 billion return as measured by incremental revenue growth, cost savings, and innovation. Chris has been a resident of Crested Butte in Denver for 20 years with his wife Andrea and son AJ. Chris was our lead facilitator in the merger of the 2 previous community foundations to form the Community Foundation of the Gunnison Valley. He's currently involved with our STEP program and a faithful supporter of CFGV and the Gunnison Valley community at large. His TICtalk tonight is keeping in shape for these changing times. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Ed, am I live? Can you hear me okay? So first thing is, this is a bit of a, where are we here? Public service announcement. Public service reminder of things that you already know. First thing I want to do is ask you to each take a deep breath in. Right now, just a deep breath. Let it go. Now we're getting in shape. Take another one in. Let it go more and simply see what you're seeing. You can look around. And if you would take another deep breath in. Okay, we're going to let that day come to us. I want you to hear what you're hearing. And let's take one more deep breath in. And as you let it go, simply feel whatever it is that you're feeling. That's it. That's just never underestimate the power of 3 breaths to reset, restore, recenter, remind, and bring yourself into this present place, which is where I'd like to start from. Also, I want us all to be able to come to our senses. And what I'm finding right now is, let's go here. You can all ask me this. Chris, how are you tonight? Would you please ask me? Chris, how? Okay, let's hear it one more time, but even louder. Chris, how are you? Thank you. I'm fine, and you're not either. I'm fine, and you're not either. And what I mean by this is the work that we do, which is a lot of development and coaching work, has to do with the troubled times that we're living in. And I don't know anyone who, under the surface, we're all coping, we all look good tonight, we look fine, don't we? Just say yes. We look great. But under the surface, I don't know anyone in these times who's not looking at the economic disparities, the social inequalities, the economic, the range of change that we see with people trying to live, the technological disruption, the culture wars, the real wars. Okay, this is all happening. This is not an America that I grew up in. And then you think it's bad, and then it really gets bad, and you get one of these. This is when it really hits home. And if there's anybody here that doesn't live in Crested Butte, this is the situation we're dealing with. The U.S. Post Office, just trying to get your mail. Through sleet, rain, snow, and all kinds of trouble, you will stand in line for a long time to try to get your mail. It's a little thing, but there's so many things right now. And that in the work that I'm doing, we're trying to get oriented. And to get us oriented, not there, I thought we'd bring a map, because maps are good. I've always loved maps. And this is a version of the map of life. And that you'll find if you stare at this, there's a number of places you've probably been. I have been all over this map. You can see the highway of life wending its way through. There's some very interesting features. One of my in particular ones down there, you have the lap of luxury, the seat of power, very close to the road to ruin. You have a number of different things that are figurative speeches. But I think that my purpose tonight was simply to provide some public service basics, fundamentals, to get back to reorienting ourselves to where we are. And instead of focusing on the big issues, I would prefer to use these few minutes to focus on us, you, our lives, our poor, pitiful lives, such as they are today. And when we look at where my work has taken me for a long time, this change management piece, we look at the environment we find ourselves in. We look at the culture. The culture here I'd call goofy mountain resort town valley, with everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, and sometimes the very strange. And that your adaptive response to the environment, you know, there's only 2 things in this life, but I forget what they are. But there are 3 things here that are important, and the first is your health. Medicine is a big idea. Your health, in the broadest sense, you're feeling good, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, it's a big deal. If you don't have your health, you're compromised in everything you do. So this is one of the major domain areas of a life, and a good life that's lived. And that when we look at, you know, the fundamentals of what you eat, how you exercise, how you sleep and rest, and your attitudes, those are really the fundamentals that we know a lot about, and they're not too controversial when you get into it. The second one, of course, is money. Money's enough. And the difference between people that have enough and not enough to be able to pay their bills, that gap is about as wide as the Grand Canyon. And we're seeing it everywhere around the planet right now, the income inequalities. And money really about success for any of us is to be able to live the life that you want to live and that you choose to live with enough. And the secret of much success is defining for yourself what is enough for you. Third one is meaning. This is what I want to spend a little bit more time on. The 3 M's, easy to remember: your medicine, your money, and your meaning. And that's your purpose, and that's why you're here. The work that we've been finding with COVID and post-COVID and people's struggling to reorient themselves and make sense of life's changes is pretty profound. It's, I'm fine. I'm really fine. You know, fine means freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm fine. That's a reasonable way to look at this. But it's about purpose. It's about why do you get up in the morning. It's about the energy and the force of your life that you bring to bear in your world. Maybe the 2 most important days of anybody's life is the day you're born and the day you figure out why you're actually here. And you start to live into the why you're here. And some of the fundamentals in the work that we do, and this tremendous research on why this is important, because Purpose correlates to longevity, and it correlates to your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction and what you could call your version of the good life. One of our seminal thinkers on this that we've been very influenced by was Viktor Frankl. Many of you may have heard of Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning, a book, if you read it a long time ago, worth rereading. He survived Auschwitz. His family didn't. He was emaciated, but he survived. And then he used his clinical training, which was almost like a Freud grade, really sharp mind, to look at the camps as if they were laboratories from which you could derive some learning. And the basic question that he did was who survives and who doesn't? Who came out of it and who didn't, and why? And it's a big idea when you look at no matter what the struggle is. One of my favorite quotes from him was, "Everything can be taken from a man or a woman but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And I think we're all facing a lot of choices right now. And purpose is funny, it's a practice. It's where fulfillment is found in some working premises that we've done. We've worked with Stanford, Harvard Medical School. We've really looked into this. A default purpose, if you haven't thought about why you're here, a good place to start is you're here to give and you're here to grow. Or you're here to grow and you're here to give. You can have it either way. And that some of the research that we've done further is that we have tools and we help people to think your talents plus your passions plus your values equal or directionally head you into the direction of a calling about what was put into you uniquely as you. And each one of us is an experiment. I have it of one. Each one. That's another corollary, which is funny. My grandmother said this to me once. She says, "Chris, remember, you're unique and special, just like everyone else." But to live into the studies of longevity, to bring your voice and your calling and finding it and living it fully as you can. Crises is a great time to look hard at this for each of us. And the longevity studies, when a lot of older people were asked, looking back, if they could have done some things differently, they have to do with, I would have been more reflective, not just at a time of crisis. I would have been more courageous in what I chose to do in terms of relationships or in what I chose to do in terms of career. And that always, across the board, I wanted my life to make a difference. Somehow, I wanted to make a difference. So this is about in pursuit of the good life, and the next thing I want to focus on is change, because to grow requires change. Help me out as an audience. When I say change is, what are the words that first come to mind to you? Change is what? Say? Difficult. What else? What else? Inevitable. What else? Painful. What else? Three at once. Good. What? Thrilling. Okay. Anybody else? Necessary. Fundamentally necessary. It's happening all the time. Every day, every minute, we are growing, we are changing. Every breath we take, the Buddhists say this, every breath a new me. Every breath a new me. That's a very interesting idea. So if I look at this, at the core, when you look at a picture like this one, what's happening in this picture? They're not quite getting it right because there's a lot of unintended consequences. But in transition, as painful and as inevitable in making choices to direct ourselves, the two fundamental questions is what to hold on to and what to let go of. And we're in a place right now, all of us, of thinking about, especially in the Gunnison Valley, with the growth and the pressures and the amazing amount of people that want to be here, that are coming. What are we going to hold on to and what are we going to let go of? And this is at the individual level. Growth requires change. When I worked at General Electric, we had an amazing business leader there who really wanted to know about how can we change better and faster since it's happening all the time. Why don't we try to get better at it? And that when first group that I worked with, we benchmarked two organizations to find out why do they have good results that seem to sustain themselves, where people change in ways that they not only change, their lives get better, and it's sustainable. And the organizations were Weight Watchers and Alcoholics Anonymous. Two organizations. And we tried to look at some of these principles. The change delta, where change is that triangle, and that on the other side, the delta, the resistance or simple inertia requires some things. And these came straight out of studies that we've replicated, taken into corporations, developed tools around. But first is that there's a belief that change is possible. I could actually live a life if I didn't have a drink, or I could live a life if I got the way that I ate and my lifestyle in control, and really keep those pounds possibly off. If there's no belief, there is no change. And leaders are there to help, to inspire, to unite, to heal, and to help people to do things that can't be done, and even to want to do things that have to be done. Another one is sufficient dissatisfaction with the current reality. Current reality has a lot to say about pain sometimes. I heard that. It's painful. And leaning into the pain seems to be the ticket through, and being able to talk about and experience that pain versus being in that denial place. It's bad and it's not that bad. No, it's really bad. No, it's not that bad. Those discussions we can all have with ourselves. Third one is a sense of clear and agreed to goals, some new version of me, some mission, some possibility of who I could be that's not the way that I am now. This was very inherent in the systemic approach that both Weight Watchers and AA take to help people say, it's not just you're going to be sober in AA's case. You're going to develop that, and then you're going to get to be happy being in that place and live a fulfilling life. Very different jump in the game. Awareness of first steps. You've heard of the 12-step programs. They each have protocols that one can follow to help you not be overwhelmed, but to have a way forward. And last but not least, contact with and support from others. I'm not alone. There's peers. It's not just me. And what we found also in terms of longevity is isolation is fatal. You don't want to be alone. And that's my core message tonight. Is more than ever, as much as everyone these days is someone else's weirdo, we need each other. My mom died 5 years ago. We had a beautiful service for her in Rochester, New York, where I grew up. 7 of her friends came. We went to the most expensive fine dining experience for lunch after the service at the Red Lobster. My mother would never go beyond the Red Lobster. You cannot spend more money than what you spend. And there was a picture of her at the table. We had about 25 people there. My little guy was there, and we were talking, and I talked to a World War II veteran. Maury and Doris were across from me, and I said, you know, we have it so easy in this life because you guys had the Depression. Nobody knew really what was going to happen. We can read about it in retrospect. You had World War II. Nobody knew what was going to happen. I understand why the martini was such an amazing drink and innovation, especially in the 50s. And he looked at me and he says, you know, you make it sound a little bit worse than it was. He says, yeah, it was tough. I mean, we had things, we gave up things, but we had something that you don't have. And I said, what? And he said, we had each other. And that's a big thing, that we need each other. We got to connect with each other. We got to reach out. So how can we do it to close my time here? Things that we know that help you through any transition, and you can do these. They're behavioral, they're specific, they're actionable. Stanford has researched these. They're related to research on DHEA in the bloodstream. They're related to a way that you can immediately rise to the occasion to help yourself recenter and refocus. Laughing. It creates endorphins. When you laugh, other people laugh. They wonder what's going on. They've wired up people. The muscle memory in the face, if you simply smile, is a great way to smile into the face of adversity. It actually creates a chemical restoration of this wonderful happy drug called DHEA. There's powerful research on this. You can do this anytime you want to. Count your blessings. People that say thank you. Gratitude is the most powerful emotions. People, this is research-based. It sounds like such a big duh. People that focus on what they do have are happier than people that focus on what they don't have. And this is another powerful practice to restore, to recenter, and to bring you forward so that you can be showing up. Saying thank you. Research on people writing letters for somebody that did something significant for him or her. A month later, they still have an elevated above normal sense of this ability to be in your zone and be creating in the moment, every breath the new me, a better me. Playing to your strengths, doing the things you love. When time passes effortlessly, those natural things, those gifts, those talents, investing in those every day. Those are things that also help you show up. And why do you want to show up? This last one is doing good. What is doing good all about? Well, that's why we're here with the Community Foundation. I've been involved with this since I moved here. It's just been an amazing, wonderful thing to know that we're here somehow every day to show up, to do good. And that's an act of leadership. And I think that's the most fundamental thing that exists on this planet right now in this century is self-leadership and having an ability to restore yourself. So I'll close on a couple of simple ideas. I'm covering a range here. The first one would come from the Bible. It's just simply from Peter and 1, and simply above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. That's one. Second one, my son's here. This is something that we're very inspired by. A great business author. This was his final book, my shark bookmark. Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. Lastly, remember the road to success, whatever it is for you, whatever the good life is that you're pursuing, is always under construction. Thank you for letting me be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Dr. Jenifer Blacklock is a recognized leader in engineering education and has mentored over 1,000 engineering undergraduate and graduate students. Jenny has been an innovator in engineering education, bringing in over $2.5 million of funding for engineering initiatives over the past 5 years. Jenny's an advocate for and strong believer in industry collaborations and real-world projects for students that support community initiatives as well as student experiences. The notion that alone we can do so little, together we can do so much, from Helen Keller, is the motto that Jenny lives by daily within the community and in life. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. So excited to be here. All right, I'm going to start with a great first slide. I think you're really going to enjoy this. All right, so today I am going to be talking about engineers, engineering identity, what engineers actually do, the partnership program, which you might have heard a little bit about, and what engineers can do for the community, okay? So I promise this won't be a super boring, lame, nerdy engineering talk. Chris, by the way, is an engineer also, so anyways. So what do we have here? Obviously. An engineer, right? This is actually what Google tells us an engineer looks like. Okay, and this is what we call a biased artifact from the past. All right, with regards to that, many of you have probably heard comments such as these before. And along with those comments, you have probably heard something similar to, he is going to be an engineer one day. I actually just said this yesterday about my 5-year-old son. So understand that this happens, okay? So I'm top student in my math class. My parents are both engineers. I like to build and play with Legos. I'm not the most social person. I'm not very creative. I only like math and science, and I'm left-brained. These biased artifacts do prevent and discourage kids, students, and adults from pursuing engineering. And in fact, we need to understand the broader definition of what engineering actually is, which is a socio-technical problem solver and thinker. That means we do not only solve problems technically, like we did in school and learned in school, but we solve them socially as well. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. This here is a much better depiction of engineering identities. Okay, so although we have barriers to these identities, it's important for us to add comments or to say comments such as, I am artistic and creative. I love music. I am good at school. I love to learn. I am an athlete. I'm curious about policy and government. I am a successful engineer. I have 4 engineering degrees. I have a management degree. I have a PhD in engineering. I have a Fulbright fellowship. I've traveled the world. I've done research across the world, whether it's in China or Dubai or Europe somewhere. And I attribute my life successes to life experiences. So this is my story. I did not take a linear path to become a successful engineer. I am hopefully not that biased artifact you saw on the first slide. Maybe I pulled my pants up a little bit. All right. This is my story, okay? I love art. I love creative writing. I love music. I love to travel. I love athletics. I was good at school, but I was not valedictorian. I was not always a straight A student, all right? Like to pretend I was, but I was not. And I had a lot of curiosities, and I was creative, and I loved to learn. So this is what made me a successful engineer. My love for art has allowed me to become a more creative problem solver and see big picture ideas. My love for writing and creative writing has, like Lauren was saying, I've become a pretty successful grant writer and won millions of dollars in NSF grants for supporting engineering education initiatives. My love of music has allowed for a creative outlet for when things get hard, and things get hard. I've also met some incredible people through music as well. My love of travel has allowed me to understand complex situations and how to navigate complex situations better. It's also allowed me to understand how to work with others better as well through cultural differences and other differences also. My love of athletics has led to the first ever outdoor industry engineering program in this valley. Some of you may have heard about this already. There's no other in the country. It's been highly successful, and we've had industry partners from across the world come to campus to meet with our students, provide real-world experiences for our students, and our students get to meet with CEOs and head of engineering of these large companies to work through complex problems and challenges with them. All right, so I'm telling you all about engineering, I'm telling you about myself, I'm telling you how I got there, but what actually do engineers do? Engineers, oops, there we go. Oh no, I'm flipping forward. Okay, can't see my next slide, are socio-technical problem solvers. So I've already said this, let's talk about this a little bit more. What does this actually mean? So historically, there has been a dualism between social sciences and technology. Okay, they've been separate. You either are a social science problem solver or you're a technical problem solver. In the last 20 years, engineers have really bridged this dichotomy of the social and the technical sciences and problem solving. And we have now socio-technical thinkers and problem solvers. So what does that actually mean? Engineers solve problems. We don't just get a complex problem and we say, this is how we're going to solve it. We create what is called a solution space. And within that solution space, we have so many different answers or ways that we can solve a problem. And in that solution space, sometimes we have really technical, maybe even over-engineered solutions. And sometimes we have social solutions. And then we have all the in-between. And it's up to the engineer and the team to work together to figure out the best solution to move forward. So this is what we call a solution space. And engineers create socio-technical solution spaces. Okay, so let me give you an example. Does everyone know what it means to get doored? Has anyone been doored? Oh no, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm very sorry. Hopefully you weren't too injured. The one person I know who got doored was very injured, unfortunately. So this is a problem in the Netherlands. High car density, high biker population density, parking, on the right there, biker lane on the left, bike, door opens, bike flips over with the rider. So this is a problem, okay, especially in the Netherlands. The Netherlands actually put a call out to say, how do we solve this problem, okay? And so we present this case study to our students. We call it the Dutch Reach case study. Maybe you know what the solution is already. Yeah. So in this Dutch Reach case study, we asked students, how would you solve this problem of people getting doored? And they say, well, we can, this is my solution space. We can have really technical, over-engineered, solutions. So sensors and feedback systems integrated into every car door. Great. Well, the one that fits best, the one that the Netherlands ended up accepting, was a very social solution. And they call it the Dutch Reach. They now train people to open the door with their right hand, forcing them to look over their shoulder to see if a biker is coming. That is a social solution. That was the best solution, okay? So Engineers are socio-technical problem solvers. Now, how do we train this in engineering education? Again, I've been involved with a lot of research, and what we have found is that when you have micro insertions of these types of case studies and examples in engineering education, students are much more likely to integrate it into their real-world problem-solving experiences, okay? So kind of fun to think about, right? How can we transition the way we teach engineering so that we can create better problem solvers? All right, so why am I talking about engineering today? What does that have to do with all of you? Well, we have a new partnership program here in the Valley. How many of you have heard of this partnership program? Okay, a couple, but some have not. Awesome. Well, let me just tell you a little bit about this partnership program. So this is a partnership between CU Boulder and Western Colorado University to graduate mechanical engineering and computer science students from CU Boulder with bachelor's of science degrees. Bachelor of BS degrees. BS degrees always sound so weird to me. Bachelor of Science degrees. Anyways, with that said, it's been an amazing opportunity for our students to experience the Gunnison Valley and to also experience the brand new 75,000 square foot Rady School of Computer Science and Engineering. Now, most of you have probably all seen that, no? That new building in Gunnison? Okay. So a beautiful facility that we get to call home. Okay, so within this facility, we have 27 classrooms with state-of-the-art technology, flexible spaces. We have lab spaces, maker spaces, machine shops, plastics processing, fabrication area, electronics lab. It's really an incredible facility that you all have access to. Okay, this is incredible. This did not happen, before really our grand opening, which was October 8th of last year. All right, so we have this incredible resource, and our students get the opportunity to obtain a CU Boulder degree while staying here in Gunnison on Western Colorado's campus. With regards to that, the students get the benefit of having small classroom sizes of around 20 to 30. We also have a very practical education delivered to our students as well. So our students get to meet with CEOs of companies and head of engineers, and we fly them out, and we all work on projects together, and they're complex, and the companies are impressed, and our students are doing great, and we're making a difference. Okay, so this is nationwide, but we can also make a difference in this Gunnison community as well. And that's what's so exciting. We now have the technical expertise, we now have technical skills, and we now have technical or socio-technical problem solvers to help us solve problems and complex problems that we all identified in the last talk with Chris, right? So with regards to that, what can engineers do for the Gunnison Valley? And that's something I want you all to continue thinking about. And hopefully after this talk, if you want to meet me at the table, we can continue these discussions. But I'd love to talk with all of you about things that we can do, that these graduating engineers and computer scientists can do for this valley. So we can help support and advance local industry, and we've already done so. Our students are in internships. They are working for companies as part-time throughout the academic year. We've helped advance some industries already, and it's exciting for everyone. Students get the experience. These local industries now can do prototyping and testing and that iterative cycle of what we call engineering and engineering design. Those technical skill sets were not here before. Additionally, here we go, we can help with these complex problems, such as housing in the Gunnison Valley. I was taking the bus home yesterday, or 2 days ago, I guess it was, and someone sitting next to me who is an acquaintance said, "Hey, you're an engineer. Is this possible?" And it's a drawing of a building with, some affordable housing ideas. And I was like, well, let's talk about this. Right? So not only can we solve the technical and we can engineer, but we can talk about the social behind it. We can ask who's involved, who's missing from this table, who's missing from these discussions. And these are things that we can help with. All right, sustainability, recycling, water management, okay? Within our own not so small building, we're prototyping a lot of different ways that we can recycle plastic and aluminum, and how can we be circular? How can we be no waste? And we're learning a lot, but we can translate a lot of what we have been learning to the community, okay? How can we do better for the community, okay? Support K through 12 STEAM initiatives in education. With regards to this, we've already launched STEAM camps for students down at the Rady School. They're getting to use this equipment, these facilities. It's incredible. Students had a wonderful experience last summer, and we're expanding our programs this year. We have students who are helping with robotics clubs up at the community school right now. We have students and faculty who are working on curriculum development in Gunnison. It's exciting for everyone. And then finally, creative solutions in general. Since we know now that engineers are socio-technical problem solvers, we know that we can be creative, and we can be creative with problem solving. So just a couple takeaways, okay? We know that there are engineering identities, and we do need to be cognizant of breaking down some of these identities and these barriers to identities for engineering. We now know that engineers are socio-technical problem solvers. We do not just solve problems technically, we solve them socially as well. And that's an important aspect for all of you to recognize of what engineers actually do. There's a new partnership program in town, so come on by. We're doing some cool things. We have an amazing facility, and we really want to integrate with the community. And everything we've done so far with the community has been really exciting, and we just hope to continue that progress forward. We love to communicate. We do like to communicate. We love to collaborate, and we're really excited to collaborate with all of you. And please note the Gunnison Valley now has these technical expertise to solve problems in a healthy and productive and sustainable way. All right, so do note that and recognize that. And hopefully you've come up with some ideas just sitting here, and maybe you're part of a company, or maybe you're part of a foundation. You're like, hey, I could use some creative problem solvers. Come to us, okay? We're here to help. So, and we have awesome students. They're like amazing, so, okay. All right, thank you all. I really appreciate your time.
As an award-winning developer and placemaker, Jeff Hermanson has directed transformative projects for more than 4 decades. He's best known as a principal partner in the restoration of Denver Union Station and the 27-year owner and steward of Larimer Square, where he created an iconic cultural institution and at one point the highest density of chef-driven restaurants in the country. Jeff's ongoing collaborations with chefs and the founding of Good Food 100, a rating system for sustainable restaurants, earned him a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Colorado Restaurant Association in 2019, when he was inducted into the Colorado Food Service Hall of Fame. Jeff is currently a partner at Urban Villages, the Denver-based real estate development firm that recently broke ground on Populous, a Gene Gang-designed lifestyle hotel destined to be an architectural masterpiece and the first carbon-positive hotel in the country. In addition to his philanthropic efforts, Jeff is devoted to creating regenerative food systems that support residents and entrepreneurial farmers in the Gunnison Valley, all part of his desire to change the food paradigm, enhance the vibrant restaurant scene, and support the community where he and his family reside. Take it away, Jeff.
Lauren, thank you. And thank you to the Community Foundation. What a great event. Lauren, you weren't very specific as to what I should speak to, so I decided to talk about myself, since it's the one thing that I feel like I'm the greatest expert on. My father inspired me in many ways. He was a Russian immigrant, and he was a classic entrepreneur, a shoe salesman, a bootlegger, and later a grocer. And for some crazy reason, just being around him, I became an entrepreneur. When I was in 6th grade, I got busted for selling illegal insect collections to other students. And when I was in college, when I was 19, I promoted a concert with a couple startup bands that you may have heard of, the Grateful Dead in Santana. In 1973, before some of you were even born, I moved to Crested Butte. I was a cocky ski bum, and it was the beginning of my education. I opened the Slogar in 1976. When I sold it 8 years later, Mac Bailey immediately changed it to a fried chicken restaurant, and it became wildly successful, way beyond my experiences. Later, I got involved in real estate, and when I was 30, I made a lot of money. When I was 32, I had lost every penny of it and was looking at bankruptcy and foreclosures. I ended up in Denver and actually began splitting my time between Denver and Crested Butte for 30 years. And when I was in Denver, I grew a restaurant company, and I had, at its peak, 7 restaurants. But my success brought other competitors into the market, and my restaurant company imploded. At the same time, I had acquired Larimer Square, and after about 5 years, the Cherry Creek Mall opened, and many of my tenants left. And I found myself in a fetal position, crying about what was going to happen. But that precipitated a turnaround in Larimer Square, where I ended up partnering with chefs and eventually created the largest concentration of chef-driven restaurants in one block in America. But the theme of these setbacks is really what I wanted to talk to you about change, crises, and reinvention. And Chris hit all those points ahead of me, but thank you, Chris, but I'll just continue my story. So from that experience that I thought I'd never recover from, I ended up with sort of a new reality. This involvement with all these talented chefs that were really provocateurs that wanted to change the world. So they were very interested in the food system. And through that, I became interested in sustainable and regenerative agriculture, and also focused on hunger in America. It's a factoid that I often mention that probably everyone in this room knows, but 1 in 6 people in the richest country in the world suffer from food insecurity. I had the pleasure of becoming a board member at the foundation of a nonprofit called We Don't Waste, which would recycle unused food from catered events, from school districts, and from grocery stores. And when it started, it was in a beater old station wagon. And last year, I mean, it's hard to believe this, but it's been about 12 years, they served 2 million meals, all the way from homeless shelters to Indian reservations. I also So in my preoccupation with changing the food system, we did things like a rooftop farm on the on the top floor of the parking structure in Larimer Square. From the affiliation with the chefs, I got involved and I founded the Food and Wine Festival here in Crested Butte. And these prima donna chefs, these provocateurs, would come up here and they'd have this great time. But after about 3 years, they said to me that they wanted more than just cooking expensive meals for rich people. Really, the expression was rich Texans, but I left that part out. So we embarked on a curriculum called Eat, Drink, Think, and we brought in a collection of really inspiring people. A young lady from the Monterey Bay Aquarium talking about sustainable fishing, a James Beard chef butcher who talked about utilization of complete animal parts, to Michelle Nassan, who's another James Beard winner, who's involved in public policy and was pivotal in creating a change so that food stamps could be used at farmers markets so that people on food stamps weren't just afforded the opportunity to buy the cheapest of foods. But that curriculum didn't resonate. And I think partly because the patrons to the Food and Wine Festival thought that shopping at Whole Foods was probably making their impact on the food system. So we abandoned it about 5 or 6 years ago. About 6 years ago, my partner Teresa and Teresa's sister died prematurely. And she left behind a 4-year-old daughter. And Teresa wanted to bring the daughter to Colorado from Nebraska. And I said, there's no way, I'm 67, I'm not gonna take a child. And I just was insistent that this wasn't gonna happen. But lo and behold, Teresa came back to Colorado with Lily. And I just fought it. I refused. I said I would never do this. No, I'm not gonna do it. But Lily put her little hand in my back pocket. And after about 4 hours, I relented. So I think that story is an example of my latest and greatest reinvention. With Lily, when we put her in school here, one of her first extracurricular activities was to work in the community garden. So it was on Tuesdays, they'd work in the garden. On Thursdays, they'd sell the produce in the parking lot. And it was like this aha moment for me. Here in Denver, I was sort of involved in more grandiose schemes, thinking that, we could have a farm outside of Denver that would produce food for Larimer Square restaurants along with the rooftop deck. But all of a sudden I realized that here in this little community, you were checking all the boxes. And it's part of the reason why I'm so engaged with Mountain Roots, because they're keen on creating a framework for a sustainable agricultural system in this high alpine environment, education, and food pantry. Right now, Crested Butte is experiencing a tsunami of change. It's easy I remember about 9 months ago, eating at one of the restaurants at the bar and sitting next to a gentleman who was just complaining incessantly about what was happening here. And he blamed all of it on short-term rentals. I didn't necessarily agree that was the singular impetus for all the change. But it reminded me that it would be easy for us to sit around. I mean, in the old days, there were potbelly stoves, and you could sit around the potbelly stove and you could talk about the good old days of when coal was burnt in town, and I think that it was an early example of cloud seeding, and there was much more snow way back when I first moved here. There was no north facelift, and you'd have powder for days after a storm, as opposed to number of hours. And of course, the bathhouse is gone. But change is present every day, and you have to make a decision if you're going to sit on the sidewalk and wait for life to come back the way it was, or stand up and embrace it and make a change. And I think everyone in this room recognizes the change, but also the opportunity. With crisis comes opportunity, and I think it's important to all of us to seize it. For me, I think it's a recognition that addressing the change isn't simply something that can be done in the public sector. I look back to my experience with Denver Union Station, which was a collaboration with both the private and public sector, which created something really magnificent. I'm inspired that one of my favorite restaurateurs in town, Kailina, is building a 10-unit complex in CB South to help house her employees, which to me represents an example of how private enterprise can be used to solve social problems. Personally, I'm involved in preliminary discussions with Western Colorado University to help jumpstart their hospitality program with the goal of creating an accredited program that would attract students that would embrace a hospitality credential. And for us, as we embark on more hospitality, more restaurant and food service operations at this end of the valley, for us it would be a way of creating a conduit for educated people to work in our facilities, either as interns or as graduates. I think that a key point that I want to make is that the demographic here is changing, and it's changing so dramatically. And a lot of the people that are coming in not only have a lot of money, but they have a lot of resources and experiences. And I think that harvesting them is critical to finding solutions. And the people that are moving here, for the most part, are not interested in an exclusive experience, but they want to be inclusive in this crazy little community. And I think that a goal is to figure out how to embrace them in making this a better place. So, Crested Butte, if I have to think back what my favorite times of Crested Butte are, I don't know. I mean, they've all been great, but I truly believe that the future that we're looking at can also be great. So I think that all of us need to be co-conspirators in finding a path forward for this great community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Dr. John Hausdoerffer is an author, teacher, philosopher, and organizational founder. He has authored and edited books such as Catlin's Lament, Indians, Manifest Destiny, and the Ethics of Nature, Wildness, Relations of People in Place, What Kind of Ancestor Do You Want to Be, and Kinship, Belonging in a World of Relations. John co-founded the Clark School of Environment and Sustainability, the Cold Harbor Institute, the Resilience Studies Consortium, and the Mountain Resilience Coalition. He believes that being a good ancestor begins with understanding the place-based ecological basis of our identities and continues with the willingness to joyfully fight for the conditions necessary for those ecological bases to thrive. When not serving as Dean of the Clark School of Environment and Sustainability, John can be found with his daughters working on his shack above Pitkin or pursuing his daughter's 100th consecutive month of skiing in the Elk Mountains. To you, John.
Thank you. Well, I thought we'd start with some word association tied to the question that frames my talk for tonight, and that is, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? And when you hear this question, I just want you to think with your gut. You know, what comes immediately to mind? What kind of ancestor do you want to be? Wise? Yes, please. Supportive. He said supportive? Wow, thank you. Responsible? Thoughtful? Eccentric? Adventurous. Oh, that's part of it. One more. A leader. Yeah, I first heard this question. I didn't even have one word. I was so stopped in my tracks by this question. What kind of ancestor do you want to be? And it was posed to me 10 years ago this month. I was on the White Earth Reservation in Minnesota. And I was there for what I thought was a really clever research project, very academic. I was taking this famous conservationist philosopher, Aldo Leopold, and his works, and I was trying to visit sort of environmental justice leaders from communities of color around the world to see whether or not Aldo Leopold was relevant to their version of environmentalism. And I thought I had this really clever framework, this perfect quote from Leopold to set up the question for these great leaders. And when I arrived on the White Earth Reservation to interview Winona LaDuke, you may remember the name as Ralph Nader's running mate from back in the day, she didn't want to interview with me right away. She had me chopping wood to set up for winter. It was this time of year. She had me working in the cafeteria of the school, helping with a farm-to-table effort for the indigenous young people in that community. And I sensed that she wanted me to experience the place before I could even ask her this question. And in my time waiting, I ran into a man named Michael Dahl. And he wanted to know why. He was really an intellectual guy. He was one of the spiritual leaders of that community. And he was really interested to be talking to a philosophy professor. He dabbled in it in college, and he was excited to talk with me. And he wanted to hear why I was there. And I was like, oh, God, he's going to love this. He's going to think I'm so smart and so cool. And I share this thing about Aldo Leopold and Winona LaDuke, and he just stops me. And he goes, the only question that matters I saw on my sister's Facebook page this morning. What kind of ancestor do you want to be? And it's taken me 10 years to even begin to wrestle with this question, because I'm not even sure I know what an ancestor is. I think I had to crack open the word and understand that what kind of ancestor do you want to be is not about being remembered, right? It's about always and already in this moment seeing yourself as an ancestor, whether or not you're remembered, whether or not you ever have kids. It's not about biology. And so then it becomes a question of who are your ancestors? And how do you go on a life journey of infinitely expanding people across your community, across cultures around the world, and finding wisdom in what they have to say, whether it's people who have passed away, or if it's living elders or contemporaries or young people. One of the authors of this in this book with me, Robin Wall Kimmerer, doesn't call them descendants. She calls them ascendants, right? And she sees herself as borrowing her land from her unborn ascendants, right? And so an ancestor is not necessarily someone who's passed away in my family, right? Someone even related to. And I'm not a good ancestor based on whether or not I'm remembered by someone in my family after I've died. I am always and already an ancestor seeking ancestral wisdom from humans living and no longer living and not yet born. The question itself collapses past, present, and future into a now where we are all empowered to be great ancestors. There's another very important layer, though. I came to realize that it wasn't just humans that were my ancestors, but the land itself. If any of you have ever read the book The Overstory by Richard Powers, in this book he talks about the Douglas fir tree as an example of a great elder. And in the moment of death, a Douglas fir tree will release all of its nutrients into a sort of fungal system in the soil to share with the rest of the forest. Right? I'm pushing 50. I'm intimidated by that Doug fir tree. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to find a way, with I hope the second half of my life, to share all the kinds of wealth I've generated in my life. But that tree is my teacher. Right? That tree is my ancestor. And so what kind of ancestor do you want to be comes down to, have we developed the skill set for learning from each other across cultures, across different human ways of knowing, across generations? Have we developed that skill set of cultural humility to truly listen to each other in a divided world? And have we developed the sort of ecological literacy to learn from the more than human realm that sustains us with ecosystem services, but that we also owe back our own ancestry, our own wisdom to that natural world that sustains us? Sounds all very abstract and very vague, so I want to make it very concrete for you, rooted in where we are. And I want to share with you, because we're about to see those first snows on the peaks. Technically, we saw them about a month ago, but we're about to see those first snows on the peak. And for me, snow is the most important ancestor to me, and it's my measuring stick for how I'm being as an ancestor. So I want to read just a small section from my essay, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? As you heard, my daughters and I are trying to reach 100 consecutive months of skiing. And so every summer we have to go snow hunting, right? We have to find those snow fields that cling to those north-facing slopes that maybe received a lot of wind deposits the winter before. And sometimes we'll hike 4 hours for, 15 turns. And one summer I learned a lot from snow. Snow hunting is a challenge that has also taught my daughters about their mountains, about those first trickles of water that lead from the snow patches of the Elk Mountains to the tributaries of the East and Gunnison rivers, until the Colorado River returns those waters to the Pacific Ocean, and eventually until the cycles of life return the moisture right back home as new snow to renew our dance and the dance of life. Snow renews the cultures and ecosystems of the West, and it also renews my bond with my daughters. Snow is sacred. One powder day when my daughter first really learned how to let go between turns where you're weightless, and she'd already known that snow is the basis of all the water, right, of all human and more than human life in the West. She goes, "Dad, is snow God?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, I feel like heaven on it, and it's the source of all life. How's that not God?" I'm like, smart kid. Whenever we worry that we might miss a month or fall short in finding snow somewhere new, we look to Ewell Pass, old reliable. Just west of Crested Butte, Colorado, Ewell Pass sits at 11,300 feet, tucked between the dark slate of Purple Mountain and the orange scree of Cinnamon Mountain. Since 1992, it's my 30th anniversary, I have skied the heart-shaped snow of Ewell Pass in September. Adelia, my older daughter, has skied it 5 times with me, and in 2018, we were eager to initiate Seoul. But when we arrived, the snow was gone. There was a small, dirty strip on the steep underbelly of the snowfield, and the rest of this water tower for the west was literally reduced to rubble. My daughter Adelia and I could ski it, but Seoul just didn't have the skills for being on a little strip like that. The laughs were not as hearty. As an environment and sustainability professor at Western Colorado University, I know the studies well. the Winter Elk Mountains could see a 75-day reduction in ski season due to climate impacts by 2090. But what does this reduced snowpack mean for ranchers, for forest fires, for the indigenous homelands of the Southwest downstream, for alpine, subalpine, semi-desert, and riparian species relying on waters from those snows, for bird migrations through this corridor, for the urban civilizations relying on western reservoirs, for the peoples of Mexico at the bottom of an unjust water distribution system? These are not abstract thoughts and concerns. And I feel a call to fight against these climate injustices when I contemplate the social and ecological impacts of climate change. But the disappointment in Sol's eyes as she looked down upon the dwindling snowfield of Ewell Pass conveyed something more powerful than all of the data on climate chaos I'd seen for a quarter century. I saw loss in her eyes, grief. It triggered my own visceral sense of loss of a way of life, loss of a way of being, loss of our playful interconnectivity. We're the very basis of life for all beings. I'll never forget that look on Sol's face. It was a look that called me out, that stretched my actions to the reality, livelihood, ecosystem services, and connectivity of unborn generations. It was a look that asked me, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? And so for me, snow, which I love playing on with my kids, fuels my fire, right? To continue to find playful and serious ways to confront climate change, right? But it also is a measurement for me. If my children's children show a seventh generation of Hausdoerffer ski bums in this valley skiing in August, then maybe I did some small thing to be a great ancestor, right? And I think the closest I've come to creating something lasting with my colleagues and with my students has been over the last 8 years. At Western, we created the Master in Environmental Management program. In the second year, instead of a thesis, students are to complete a 600-hour project anywhere in the world. We've had master's projects. We have a student right now in the Himalayas. We've had students in Kenya, Costa Rica, serving organizations to accelerate their ability to achieve their vision, to extend the reach of overextended organizations worldwide. The program is putting out 25,000 hours of projects per year, every year. And thanks to the generosity of Butch Clark, for which the Clark Family School of Environment and Sustainability is named, those projects will last as long as there's a Western. 25,000 hours per year, right? Trying to enact playful, creative, politically serious, inventive, collaborative climate actions out of this valley going around the world. And so for me, when I think, what kind of ancestor do I want to be, it's not necessarily even through my actions, right? It comes down to three things, right? I know my place. I know my snowpack. I know what about this place makes me, most joyful, and most clear on whether or not I'm being responsible to the source of life that rests above me that I can see out my door every day. One, I know my snow through knowing my place. Two, I'm connected deeply with my kids. My ascendants are my teachers, right? For whether or not my solutions are in fact playful or just exhausting, right? Because using doom and gloom data and guilt alone is only going to exhaust the next generation, right? And three, I try to leave some institution in place, right? That'll create some engine of change through the creativity of my colleagues and my students and generosity of people like Butch Clark, that 25,000 hours a year, every year, as long as there's a Western, we can ignite and empower students to ignite and empower communities to make this world more livable and more playful. So, thank you.
Thank you, John. And thank you all four of you, for bravely embarking on this with us. Last week we had 4 additional dynamic presenters, and this has been our first series of TICtalks. There are a lot of ideas for where we go from here, and so thank you for being part of the very first ones, because that's a brave thing to do. If you're not familiar with Seth Godin, he's a serial blogger, among many other things, and passionate about spreading ideas and changing everything. And this was timely last week, I thought I would share with you all. Moore's Law talks about the fact that computer chips get faster and cheaper over time. It turns out that the biggest shift to our culture isn't the changing speed of a computer chip. It's what happens when we network humans together. Adding more people to the internet has accelerated science, politics, and every element of culture. The echoes happen faster, the learning is exponential, and connected communities heat up and morph ever faster. Science used to be a solo endeavor. A monk with some pea plants could figure out genetics. Today, there are millions of people advancing the work of millions of people, with new updates coming all day long. The problems are dramatically more difficult, but the solutions are possible because we've multiplied the speed of change. Thinking of problems as things for individuals to solve is hopelessly out of date. Now, from problems to paradigms. A paradigm is a set of assumptions, concepts, values, and practices that constitutes a way of viewing reality for the community that shares them. Paradigm shifts arise when the usual and accepted way of doing or thinking about something changes completely. Is it time for a paradigm shift, however small or large? Have you ever seen those two-sided puzzles? Is anyone a puzzler out there? And done those two-sided puzzles? Many of us tend to complete the puzzle on the same side because the image is familiar. But turn it over. The same puzzle pieces with a totally new image that maybe we didn't understand or even like before. And now it's one that makes sense. Perhaps tonight our speakers have given us the opportunity to flip the puzzle over. Same pieces, but now a whole new image that has meaning it didn't before. Thank you to Chris, Jenny, Jeff, and John for challenging assumptions and inspiring big thinking. And thank you all for taking time to be here this evening. I invite you to join us in the lobby to continue the conversation with tonight's presenters. And we will be sharing the video of this evening's TICtalks as well as those from last week. Keep an eye out for those in your inbox, and we'll see you in the lobby. Thank you.